All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking something pretty cool, how a casual, everyday game of truth or dare can actually be a brilliantly effective, stress-free way to master intermediate English conversation. If you've ever felt your mind just completely go blank when trying to speak a new language, hey, you are definitely not alone. We're looking at source material that completely ditches that old, dusty textbook approach. Instead, it uses gameplay, storytelling, and a good dose of humor to help you naturally absorb B1 level English. We're going to see how real-life feelings and, those slightly embarrassing stories can literally be your ultimate language learning tool.
The source material actually kicks off with these hilarious, totally relatable weather metaphors, which instantly lowers the anxiety we usually feel when learning a language. Think about it. We've got the walking onion, peeling off layers during one of those really confusing weather days. And on the flip side, the human ice cube, that person freezing in the office, desperately clutching a cup of hot tea just to survive the AC. By starting with these playful concepts, the source proves that practicing English doesn't have to be rigid or boring. It can literally just be about describing your weird morning commute.
So here's our quick roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with English through fun and games, then move into truth, spilling the beans, tackle dare, speaking and mistakes, and wrap it all up with the English word tour.
Okay, part 1. English through fun and games, ditching the grammar test for real conversations.
The absolute crucial point here is that learning just works better when you replace those high-pressure, scary tests with safe, relaxed play. When you're stressing out about grammar rules, your brain actually puts up a giant wall. But the beauty of framing a lesson like a game of truth or dare is that it kind of tricks your brain into taking a mini vacation. You're not agonizing over verb conjugations. Instead, you're focused on the suspense of what someone is going to say next. And that low-anxiety, fun environment, that is exactly where language retention truly thrives.
Moving on to part 2. Truth, spilling the beans, learning idioms through personal anecdotes.
Right. So before we get into the host's deep personal stories, we really need to, spill the beans. This is just a fantastic idiom that means to reveal hidden information or tell a secret. And when you attach a vocabulary phrase like this to a game of truth, it suddenly gets real-world context. You're not just staring at a phrase on a vocabulary list, you are actively sitting on the edge of your seat waiting for someone to spill the beans about their own life.
And this brings us to a story that perfectly illustrates the ultimate betrayal. One of the hosts talks about a friend who used this exact terrible excuse after stealing their final golden VIP French fry. Let me paint the picture for you. The host is saving that one perfect, crispy fry at the very bottom of the carton. They look away for literally a microsecond, and their friend just grabs it and eats it, offering that weak apology. I mean, we have all been there, right? It's these highly specific, slightly ridiculous, but incredibly relatable stories that make the English language feel alive.
And because of that single stolen potato, the host did exactly this. They kept a secret, burning anger toward their friend for 3 whole years, which perfectly defines the phrase, hold a grudge. Notice what the source is doing here. It's linking the heavy emotional weight of holding a grudge to a completely silly, low-stakes scenario. And that contrast is a game changer. It makes the vocabulary so sticky in your memory. You're never going to forget what hold a grudge means because you'll forever associate it with the deep tragedy of the stolen VIP French fry.
That perfectly sets up our second story, which kicks off with this highly relatable question. Have you ever just started chatting with a barista or maybe a random person on the bus and suddenly found yourself telling them your entire life story?
The source gives us these 3 idioms that perfectly capture the host's experience of massively oversharing to a taxi driver. So the driver simply looks in the mirror and asks, "Long day?" Just a tiny, polite question, but man, that completely pushes her buttons. It acts as a total trigger for her stress. And because her buttons were pushed, she proceeds to spill her heart out, just launching into this massive monologue about how awful her week was. In that exact moment, she becomes completely vulnerable, confessing her deep, emotional desire to just quit everything and live by the sea with a cat. And the driver's response to all this raw emotion? "Yes, ma'am, traffic is very bad today." It's so funny, but grouping these phrases contextually like this makes them so much easier to remember.
All right, let's jump to part 3. Dare, speaking and mistakes. Overcoming the fear of spoken English. When challenged to accurately describe his current mental state, one host almost did this. He almost backed away out of sheer fear. To chicken out is a super common, very natural conversational phrase. In a learning environment, the fear of making a silly mistake makes a ton of students just want to chicken out of speaking altogether. But the source really hits the nail on the head here. These dares are meant to be a totally safe space to just try, even if you stumble over your words.
So, instead of chickening out, he delivered this incredibly creative mental weather report. Instead of just giving a boring, "I'm stressed," you actually map out your brain. He said he had a light rain of unfinished ideas up in the north, a big, heavy, slow cloud of gym guilt right in the middle, and a strong wind of phone notifications blowing in from the east. It is such a brilliant, fun way to use standard weather vocabulary in a highly advanced metaphorical way. And as you might expect, hearing about that slow cloud of gym guilt caused his co-host to completely do this. She just lost it, proving that making mistakes or being a little weird is entirely part of the fun. To crack up means to suddenly lose control and just laugh uncontrollably. And honestly, that is the secret sauce of this whole approach. When you're laughing, when you're just cracking up at your own silly sentences or a host's funny story, your brain is actually pumping out dopamine. And dopamine literally improves memory retention. So having fun isn't just a bonus, it's a functional learning tool.
The next dare involves a classic English tongue twister. These are designed to purposely confuse your mouth and your tongue, while secretly acting as a pronunciation workout. The host gets challenged to say this one, and, predictably, their tongue completely trips up. But there's a really great point made in the source material here. Even when your mouth makes an absolute disaster of the sentence, you are still actively working out the exact muscles required for tricky English pronunciation.
To help with that, the source outlines this perfect 3-step method. You start very slowly, then you try it at normal speed, and finally, you push it a little fast. And hey, if your tongue goes on holiday and you mess up, you are still actively practicing those sounds. This little step-by-step process is actually a microcosm of language learning itself. You're increasing the pressure slightly, step by step, but never so much that you actually want to quit.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 4, the English Word Tour, consolidating your vocabulary.
Let's logically group some of these idioms together to help lock them in, starting with expressions for panic or anxiety. Notice how these three work so beautifully in a sequence. Imagine this scenario. First, someone puts you on the spot by asking you a really hard question in front of a crowd. Because of that sudden pressure, internally, you just freak out. And finally, because the panic is too much, you might chicken out and just pretend you didn't hear them. See? Grouping them by a theme makes them stick so much better.
Next, we have these deeply emotional phrases, like the bittersweet feeling of remembering that old friend who ruthlessly ate your VIP French fry. Once again, we can tie these together into a little narrative. Maybe you hold a grudge against someone for years, but then you run into them and you both just crack up laughing about how silly the whole thing was. Suddenly, it becomes a bittersweet memory. Learning words connected to real emotion and conflict ensures that you actually have the vocabulary to express your true, nuanced human feelings, rather than just spitting out robotic textbook responses.
We're going to leave you with this provocative thought right here. Take a moment right now to practice your new vocabulary and describe the weather in your own mind. Are you experiencing a sunny, lazy mood, or maybe a bit of a storm of overthinking? By taking the concepts from this explainer and immediately applying them to your own daily life, you stop being a passive listener and become an active speaker. Seriously, don't chicken out. Give it a try.